Hello everyone, my name is Sonakshi Sinha and I work as a senior manager in the data privacy and legal team at RiskPro India. Today's video is to address a query raised by people wherein they want to understand if the DPDPA is also applicable to other sectors other than the business. Now your DPDPA is applicable to all the sectors processing personal data and collecting the personal data in a digitized format. It is not only the businesses that have to be compliant to the DPDPA, but the other industries also have to take care of the compliance under the Act. Now, if we don't comply to the regulation, obviously we have hefty fines out there. And as an organization who is collecting the digitized personal data and processing it, we will have to get ourselves compliant. There are a lot of sectors which process a lot of personal data, for example, your education industry, your healthcare industry, etc. etc. Now let us take an example of the education industry and try to understand how DPDPA is applicable to the education industry. Now the education industry is collecting a lot of personal data of the students. That can be a past student, that can be a present student, that can be a future student, or a student that has applied for scholarship. The details of the parents' guardian are something that we collect when we are in our education industry. We are also collecting the employee data, that is your teacher data. Next is your when you're talking about education industry, we are also collecting a lot of data of the vendors. We have a lot of partners there where the personal data might be captured there. We have website data that comes to you, maybe a mobile application data that comes to you. So these are the data sets that we collect when we are working in an education industry. Now when we are having so much of personal data in the education industry, how it is possible that the Act is not applicable to the industry. Now it is a very important point to remember that this Act will only be applicable if we are collecting the data in a digitized format. So if the education industry is not converting the data into a digitized format, or the education industry is not collecting the data in a digitized format, there your DPDPA compliance would not be needed. But because today we all are using digitized format for data collection and other data processing, so that is why your education in the education industry also we have to get compliance to this particular regulation. Now there are a lot of do's and don'ts with respect to children data. Obviously, now when I'm saying children data or any other data of the students or the parents or the visitors or your vendors, we have to keep a lot of things in mind. Now first of all, under the India DPDP Act, we can only process the personal data based on your consent. So when we are obviously talking about children, we have to collect the consent of the parents' guardian. When we are talking about other students and visitors and vendors and partners, we have to collect their consent for processing the data. Second do's or don'ts with respect to your education industry or the data that we collect from the education industry is that we have to have a legal ground for processing that data. So because we are in an education industry, we are not permitted to use the personal data without having a ground. So a legal ground is something that we have to take care that we have a legal ground. A legal ground can be a consent, a legal ground can be a basis on which we are processing the data. Next is your accuracy. We will have to, as an education industry, also have to maintain the accuracy of data. So whenever we are collecting any data, that has to be accurate, and we have to maintain the accuracy of data. If in case the data is not accurate, we need to delete that. Next thing that we have to do when we are collecting any personal data, processing the personal data, is data minimization. We have to only collect the personal data that is needed. So we have seen that school and colleges and other education industry collect a lot of data that they don't need. So they have to minimize the data collection specific to what they require and not collect a lot of personal data there. Data security is the other thing that we have to take care as an education industry. Now our data should be secure because we are in the education industry. It is not that the data security can take a pitfall. So there you have to make sure that the data is secure, and that for that we have to have a data security environment. Security of data should be taken care of by the education industry, and that is a very important point today. Next is your a proper privacy framework is something that should be there when we are talking about the education industry as well. So privacy environment will help the education industry to secure the data that they are capturing. It will help to give a proper way forward with respect to the data that they are collecting and storing and processing and sharing with the vendors. So a lot of privacy things will be covered under the when we are implementing any kind of privacy environment under the in the education industry as well. So it is a must to have a privacy environment in the education industry as well, and this will definitely help the education industry to get compliant to the DPDPA regulation. And it is very true that it can be any industry that we are talking about, but if we are collecting any kind of personal data in a digitized format, we have to get ourselves compliant. So your education industry is not something wherein is not an industry that is exempted under the regulation. So we will have to make sure that we are getting ourselves compliant to the DPDPA Act, and if we are not going to do that, we are going to incur a hefty fine, and obviously your education industry will not be spared or exempted from the DPDPA Act. So if in case you need to understand more about how the education industry and DPDPA is applicable and what you can do, as in when you are working in an education industry and you want to have a privacy framework, what steps you can take and how you can develop a privacy framework. If that is something that you want to understand, you can contact us on our email ID, you can contact us through our website, and we would be happy to help you to understand why your education industry or any other industry per se who is collecting personal data has to comply to the DPDP, and how they can develop a privacy framework to maintain that DPDPA compliance. So this was a short video to make you understand how DPDP is applicable to other industry as well. I have in detail discuss about the education industry, but there are other industries as well wherein the personal data act would be applicable and compliances would be adhered to, and we will have to make sure together that we understand what the compliances requirement are and how we can achieve that compliance, and what you can do as a as in the industry wherein you are collecting personal data, and how we can help you with the processing the implementation of the privacy framework. In case you have any queries or any service related inquiries, you can write to us. We would be happy to help you. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope this video was a helpful video for you all.